So friends, on February 8th, the Supreme Court will hear oral arguments on whether an insurrectionist should be permitted to return to the Oval Office. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, Donald Trump engaged in insurrection. A trial court judge, after a trial on the merits, at which fact witnesses testified and expert witnesses testified, a trial court judge entered findings, concluded, ruled that Donald Trump engaged in insurrection. A state Supreme Court affirmed those findings, concluding that Donald Trump engaged in insurrection. A Secretary of State, after conducting a hearing mandated under state law, concluded, ruled, found that Donald Trump engaged in insurrection. And of course, we saw it with our own eyes. On January 6th, Donald Trump incited an insurrection. Donald Trump engaged in insurrection. Donald Trump refused to call the insurrection off mid-attack when people were begging him to put a stop to it. Donald Trump has given aid and comfort to the insurrectionists. Indeed, he's giving them aid and comfort to this day. Friends, I maintain Donald Trump is still engaged in insurrection, refusing to accept the results of the 2020 presidential election and sowing seeds of dissension and violence. And now, the Supreme Court will decide if Donald Trump can again hold office, whether he can retake the reins of presidential power. In a very real sense, the Supreme Court will decide if we're going to give our democracy away to an insurrectionist. So the case that will be heard by the Supreme Court on February 8th is titled Donald Trump versus Norma Anderson. Norma who? Let's talk about Norma who. The Washington Post just did a lengthy piece, a wonderful piece, about Norma Anderson. And if you'll bear with me, I want to quote from it at length. It's authored by a reporter named Patrick Marley. And here is the headline in the new Washington Post piece. The 91-year-old Republican suing to kick Trump off the ballot. Norma Anderson, a trailblazing former GOP legislator, is among the Colorado voters who have challenged the Republican frontrunner's candidacy in a case that will be heard by the Supreme Court. And that article begins, Norma Anderson left the Colorado legislature nearly 2 decades ago, but she still keeps a copy of the state's statutes in her home office. She carries a pocket constitution in her purse. She has another copy, slightly larger, with images of the founding fathers on the cover, that she leaves on a table in her sitting room so she can consult it when she watches TV. She's turned down a page corner in that copy to mark the spot where the 14th Amendment appears. She has reread it several times since joining a lawsuit last year that cites the amendment in seeking to stop Donald Trump from running for president. Anderson, 91, is the unlikely face of a challenge to Trump's campaign that will be heard by the Supreme Court on Thursday. She was a force in Colorado politics for decades, serving as the first female majority leader in both chambers of the legislature. She's a Republican, but has long been skeptical of Trump and believes he is an insurrectionist who crossed a verboten line on January 6, 2021 that should bar him from holding office again. This from Ms. Anderson. Quote, "He tried to overturn an election," she said. "The very first time I ever ran, I didn't win. I didn't go out and try to change the election. I said, whoops, work harder next time, lady." The 2024 election could turn on whether the Supreme Court agrees with Anderson and 5 other Republican and independent voters who persuaded Colorado's top court to rule that Trump is ineligible to run again. The justices, 3 of whom were nominated by Trump, are expected to quickly decide the historic Trump versus Anderson case, with their ruling likely to apply across all 50 states. Although considered a legal long shot, a decision in Anderson's favor would jolt American politics by preventing the GOP frontrunner from continuing his campaign. However the justices rule, they're likely to displease a large chunk of an intensely polarized electorate. The case is built on the 14th Amendment, which was adopted 3 years after the end of the Civil War to guarantee rights for the formerly enslaved and to prevent former Confederates from returning to power. That latter provision, known as Section 3, is written broadly to say those who engage in insurrection after taking an oath to support the Constitution cannot hold office. Anderson's lawsuit, brought with the help of the group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, or CREW, argues Trump can't appear on Colorado's March 5 primary ballot because he engaged in insurrection before and during the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Colorado's High Court agreed in a 4-3 ruling in December, and Trump appealed the case to the Supreme Court. And because Donald Trump appealed his loss in the Colorado courts, the case that is now before the Supreme Court is titled Donald Trump versus Norma Anderson. And if you'll indulge me just another couple of minutes, I want to read a little bit more about Ms. Anderson. She won a seat in the Colorado House in 1986, 4 years after losing her first bid. Her status as the first female majority leader means less to her, she said in an interview in her suburban Denver home, than what she considers her legislative accomplishments: creating the Colorado Transportation Department, rewriting the state's school funding system, and establishing a visiting nursing program. During her tenure in the legislature, Anderson was considered a conservative who could work with others but knew how to get her way, said Dick Wadhams, a political consultant and former chairman of the Colorado Republican Party. Quote, "Once she, Miss Anderson, decided where she was on an issue, she stuck to that," he said. She didn't waver. And I think that's one of the reasons why she was so popular at the time with Republicans, because she was strong. Nobody pushed Norma around. Mike Beasley, who worked with Anderson when he was the chief lobbyist for Governor Bill Owens, said he had watched her bring the biggest bullies in politics and lock that door in her office and say, "Here's how it's going to be, boys. We're going to work this out. We're going to figure it out." And 9 out of 10 times, she got her way, 100%. Anderson surprised her colleagues when she abruptly quit the state Senate in 2006, a year before her term was up. She stayed active in politics, but began to have reservations about a party that she believed was focusing too much on people's personal lives. When Trump was the party's presidential nominee in 2016 and 2020, she voted for third-party candidates. She quit the Republican Party in 2018 because of Trump, but rejoined it in 2021, saying, quote, "I thought, I'm the Republican. They aren't." So it's interesting, friends. Miss Anderson quit the Republican Party in the age of Trump, but thereafter she rejoined, saying, "I'm the Republican. They are not." Now, I'll leave it up to you all to decide who the they are in Miss Anderson's estimation. But here's what I want to finish with, friends. In a Republican world full of Jim Jordans and Josh Hawleys and Mike Johnsons and Lindsey Grahams, be a Norma Anderson. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.